So, new recording.
Alright, hello. Today we are talking on this podcast about the philosophy of America.
I'm Matt Ferris.
I'm Jacob Matsubara.
Okay, so, America's pretty big.
Pretty big. Kind of large.
Yeah.
So Matt, what do you think is the main philosophy of America, if it even has one?
Philosophy, like, this was talked about in class a lot. America is, like, from the previous reading that we last did, Theo Gorman, basically saying that America was, or is, an invention of Europe.
Yes,
and
I would agree with that.
So it's like America is everything else. And that's what makes America America, is that it's an emulation of everybody else's ideals.
Okay.
But
so
gone out of whack.
Gone out of whack. Why do you think it's gone out of whack?
How to put it? So America is. It went off the rails in what everybody wanted it to be. So, like, the whole colonization, they wanted it to be
Europe, right?
They wanted it to be Europe. They wanted it to be a source of income. They wanted it to be like the new Europe, but also like
something
India, like the
new.
East Indian Company,
Yeah.
how they treated India as a source of resource, They wanted America to be like that, but they wanted it to be more Europeanized, so that way it was the new
It
Europe.
would prove the point of European humanism, right?
Yeah, it would prove that Europe was better.
Yeah.
Essentially. And like so, America itself went off that track or that ideal, and essentially became its own entity. But it still emulates those ideals, where it wants to be Europe, but also wants to be its own institution.
What specific ideals are you talking about?
Ideals like that's like a huge topic. You can go into the financial ideals. So
right.
We want to be rich. We want
to be rich. All of us. We want to have our own work that we choose. Right? It's like Enlightenment type ideals, like talking about that reading on work that we had, where like girl was trying to find work in a place to like free herself from the other expectations, right?
Yeah. So like.
So she's not just stuck at home. She's out doing something with a purpose.
Yeah. It goes really far, because just saying that it's a European copy is sort of it's
disingenuous.
Limiting. Yeah. It's very it doesn't say all there is about what America can be. America is fluent, I guess you could say.
Fluent or fluid?
Because
I would say fluid is more accurate.
Fluid, you're right with that.
Because of how pluralized it is, or just because we don't know what it is?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both?
Because,
right.
like, a great example is the whole immigration that happened in the early, in the late 1800s, early 1920s. People all over were coming in, and it was difficult to say, like, what an area, like, areas began really being classified by where he came from. So, like, you had, like, the Italian section of the city. You had, like,
town, you got the Irish town, you got Chinatown.
You had literally every town in a town.
Yeah.
And it became such a mix that...
But is it a mix if they're all in their own separate towns?
Well, that's the thing. It started out like that, but like people merge. A great example is my own hometown. Nordmass was originally a really Lebanese community. It was where all the Lebanese immigrants really came in the early 20s to 40s.
Okay.
But then more people started coming in, and it kept on getting more and more diluted. So
is the ultimate result of America is a dilution of identity into American, or is it something else?
Like it's like American is the beaker that just holds all.
The melting pot.
Yeah, it's the melting pot. It's like I was going to go with some with the dilutions, but it's like it's all mixing together, so that way nobody who lives here eventually everybody will lose those classic identities, and like that's the ultimate goal.
Is that the goal?
Or not goal, but it's going to be the outcome. Is that nobody's really going to have an identity because everybody's all so mixed up at this point that like how many people like that have been here for more than 2 generations still follow the exact same traditions that their predecessors had.
True.
That they followed for like hundreds of years in their own countries.
But could you say the same for other immigrants to other countries? Is America unique in this aspect, or is it more of just this is what happens when you remove a people from a place to a different place?
Like America is, I think it's more just a very exaggerated example of it.
Okay.
Like I'm sure that you can find examples of people moving into another country and adopting more of that country's culture. But what makes America unique is that it never had a starting culture in a sense, or rather its starting culture was the immigration that was coming in.
Okay. So completely ignoring the native cultures that already existed here, basically.
Yeah, those got completely
Europeans
stripped away.
Are like that.
Yeah, so they implement the first European settlers implemented their original culture, but
we also have to remember the European settlers of North America, at least, were not really the original culture of Europe. They're kind of puritanical. They're very offset from what was the norm in Europe too. So
yeah, but being the first, they did set a precedent.
Yes.
So they did set the this is what we sort of want to make it out to be, so we're going to try and keep it going in this direction. But even then, that didn't last for very long. Like so many other religions and cultures started coming in that
it did last for a while though. Well, if we look back, like puritanical values still form the basis of North American society still. Like if we look at even like the election of JFK, people were worried because he was a Catholic that he would get orders from the Pope. Like that is very much something that
you are
not
right. It's there's like a middle ground. There's like I don't know. It feels like a knotted string. Like it just got. It's definitely leading somewhere, but it's got a whole bunch of bumps and stuff, making it all distorted along the way. That, like, it's difficult.
It is very difficult, because does it really lead anywhere?
Yeah, and to be honest, like, the only thing we really have to go off of is a very short American history. Like from the time, because based on this class and everything that's been going on with it, we can assume that we're going to be talking about America from the day Christopher Columbus first set eyes upon it and said it was Asia. We can't really go off of it being that all the way from Native American history, because being honest here, that culture was essentially wiped out.
Basically, yes.
That America disappeared. Like the day that colonization really began. So it's like it's not like it's a bad thing that it disappeared.
Yeah.
Like even though there's fragments of it left, we can't honestly say that's America anymore. Just because it's so pushed out or like just wiped out.
So, do you have any theories on why the culture of America today seems so divided between conservative and liberal? Where is the great melting pot there, where bipartisanship has just fallen apart?
Like in that aspect of America, that's honestly I don't know. I have no idea where it could have. Like the best I can honestly answer with that is that the melting pot. Like not everything's going to mix.
Okay.
And there's going to be a set of ideas. Like there was an interesting study done a while ago. Honestly, this was said on the news a couple weeks back.
Well, which news? That's also a
CNN.
thing we have to think about.
It was on CNN.
Can you trust the lying CNN?
It was on CNN, but it was an interesting little thing where it was talking about the ideals around whether you're a Democrat or Republican. And it wasn't really advocating for either, which is why, like I'm saying now, is that Democrats were far more, or people who followed the Democrat Party, not necessarily the people who were in the Democrat are trying to get elected in the Democratic Party, but people who follow. So basic civilians. That they were far more selfish and were far more business oriented, were far more rationalistic in their ideals. Rationalistic in the sense of like modern day.
And those are the ones following the Democratic Party?
They were the ones following the Democratic Party.
And
on the other hand, the
Republicans?
Republican Party was far more irrational in that they had a very religious sense.
Okay.
That they were in fact far far less selfish in their ideal. Selfishness being that like wanting to be around people, wanting to do activities oriented
Okay,
like
so
church groups.
You're defining selfishness as sociability.
Sociability selfishness. That was
Okay.
that was the way they defined it. Was as selfishness as being wanting to be more sociable or
Less sociable.
less sociable.
I would
but
have
it's
many problems with that definition as a very unsociable person, but continue.
Yeah, but it was interesting that they defined it in those terms, but it also says a lot because there is truth behind those sayings, that there is a lot of... There's definitely a difference between people and the way people think.
Yes.
But we are getting a bit derailed.
I don't know, I think this route does define America more.
Yeah.
Like, I have my own theories on why this is. So, if we look back at O'Gorman's picture of America, the big map where European humanism crosses over and creates its own country, we also have to remember Du Bois and his idea of the white Europe. It's interesting to think that the white Europe creates this humanism where whiteness is valued over everything. Whiteness is civilization. So you create a country based on this flawed idea of humanism, and what happens? You get slavery, you get other colonization, you get basically mirroring European ideals. But we also moved away from European ideals still. And so what is our humanism now? if you look back at like the Royce's loyalty, you can see a more like grander picture when it comes to a kind of humanist ideal.
Yeah, like
you see, I mean, Royce was more of the rationalist mindset, but his idea for his loyalty was that humanity is working to a betterment all the time. We are loyal to each other to better each other. That is a very humanistic ideal there.
Yeah, but like that whole argument that was against pragmatism, essentially, and the whole pragmatist idea was meant to be like an idea designed to emulate or an idea that was America's, essentially.
Yeah.
Like it was just a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And that whole argument of loyalty was meant to fight against it, but was it
to fight against it, or was it to adjust it more to the rationalistic mindset?
True.
Because that was my reading of it.
But wasn't that what we read about pragmatism? Wasn't that he mentioned something in class about being wrongly portrayed in that reading from the original creators' ideals? I can't remember exactly what it was.
Are you talking about William James's improper like look at his colleagues' definition of pragmatism?
Yes. That so
that's different from Royce, though.
Yeah. That was different from Royce, but what was the... so we have pragmatism as being a logical way of finding truth, or it was a redefinition of truth.
Yes.
Truth being...
what is useful, what is going to get you a result.
Yeah, an interpretation of facts in a practical manner. But what was his colleagues... so James is... writing Emily's colleagues' thoughts or ideals. What was his colleagues? What was
it was another issue. I completely forget what specific part he had a problem with. It
wasn't truth. I think, wasn't it facts?
I think it was some small part that he got wrong that kind of changed the whole thing.
Yeah, it was either on truth or facts. The way he defined them, but I can't remember which. But like, what I was going to ask was, when we talk about the loyalty, if we correct James's writing, does the whole loyalty change as well?
I mean, does it matter?
True.
That's the question. Like, that's the whole thing about pragmatism is like, if the question can be answered, but the answer doesn't matter to anything, what does it? So even if William James got it wrong from his friend, his own definition of pragmatism can still be applied, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's not like inventing a subject means that subject always has to be correctly produced or used, because if you use it wrong, you could just change the subject.
Yeah. So, like, going off of everything before, is pragmatism even technically American? Because it said it was made in America for Americans, but if America is an emulation of European thoughts and ideals, then is pragmatism American, or is it just a shoot-off or a branch of European philosophy?
Well, here's the thing. When does something become non-European?
Or when does something become American?
Yeah.
Like, that's a difficult question.
Yeah. So when does a species become a species, basically? When does it evolve past what it was before is the question there.
So
I would define pragmatism as definitely American. And I would say America started becoming America probably at the Declaration of Independence. it still has European ideals, but is actively trying to be apart from Europe.
So does that mean anything that took place before the Declaration of Independence is not America? Because didn't we say that it was talked about, like back to O'Gorman, that America was discovered as America with Columbus,
but
like
it was created by Europe as a thing.
Yeah. So
but now
we get this really hazy zone.
Yeah.
Where a lot of these ideals began during that colonization period, and a lot was you have all that time before the Declaration of Independence, where the American ideas or the offshoot ideas of European ideals were being created. Which were just different enough. Like when you said about when does a species
become a different species?
Yeah, become a different species, and the actual answer to that is when it portrays traits that causes changes in behavior from other species. So, for instance, when you have different species of bird, when Darwin was categorizing them. One of the big factors, especially in the Galapagos, I think it was finches, were beaks, and they used different styles of beaks for different activities. So some used it to get into logs to get certain bugs, some used it to crack nuts, and they were all extremely similar. But because they had these different beaks, they had differences. So if we take that into context with America, when did America start taking those European ideals and start
changing them?
Yeah, start changing them. So we have America and Europe. Both of them are the bird part, and the ideals are the beaks. When did we start using ideals differently than Europe used them? So
well, I would say because the birds evolved the beaks to be useful for their own survival. So when America started taking ideals that were practical for their own survival as a nation, it is when they become different from Europe.
Yeah.
So in that case, it would probably be at the start. But we also have to remember, a species becomes a different species when they can no longer procreate.
No, they can still procreate.
Well, procreate and create a offspring that is viable and can procreate again is
no. They can definitely reproduce. So the thing is, they'll have traits that are in between, or either or very drastic in either direction. So, for instance, you can have different species of what was it? There's a lot of different species of bird that can procreate, but they don't necessarily become. What you're thinking about is horses and donkeys.
Oh, yes.
Because those, when they procreate, they create.
Same for the liger, I think. Tiger and lion.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, back to the point. When does America become America? When they adapt to be something different in the new land they are on? Or is there a cutoff point, like at the Declaration of Independence, or later on?
Honestly, I think it's right when colonization first started. So, America was first discovered with Columbus, or rather
the European consciousness imagining it to be something.
Yeah.
And then acted upon through colonization.
Yeah, but America was first created when the first settlers came and survived. So, you had those first starting towns which died out, and with them all their ideals. But the ones that survived stuck with it. So you have the Puritans, who came over and actually survived. Though that's really Though I think there was a colony before the Puritans.
Probably there was
a couple colonies.
Yeah,
but
the Puritans survived and thrived and spread out across the land.
Yeah, or at the very least, their ideals spread as more people came over. But that's really when America was made. So the idea was conceived with Columbus.
Yes.
So it's like the blueprints were laid out, but it was actually made when people came over, and that's when their first ideals started coming into play. Because
so. How different did these ideals become, though? Because I would argue that the same ideals that made Europe lasted for a while, especially the humanism of only whiteness.
Yeah,
that lasted far longer than even in Europe.
Yeah, so like,
you know, looking at slavery lasting for a while.
Yeah. Change. You gotta remember that America is still really young in comparison to a lot of other nations around the world.
But does the age of a nation really matter too much when you when you talk about the moral value of actions of people in that nation? Does the age excuse that?
Oh, it doesn't excuse it, but it definitely has an impact. So, change does take time. And we've seen this in America, that change has taken place, especially in comparison to the European ideals. Hell, we have an entire different measurement system.
Yes. Which is the old measurement system that we don't want to get rid of. Yeah, which says something else.
It says something else, but it also states that it's like change happens differently. And we change in different ways from the American ideal, and we slowly branch off from them. And it's not that we started out from the same. We started out from the same plans. We started out from the same start. We all started in Europe.
Yes.
And Europe went off in one direction. America went off in another. But we still carry those some of those ideals with us. But we're slowly dropping them off and changing.
Alright, so do you think we've dropped off the whiteness of humanism yet? Or have we switched to a completely universal humanism?
That's going a whole race ideology. And
isn't that part of America, though?
Definitely.
If we don't talk about the race in America, we're not talking about America.
Yeah, but that's being talked about today. And some people argue yes, that we've dropped it, and some people argue no. So in essence, probably no, since we still talk about it so much. But that's definitely something that's coming.
I would argue that we are in the process of dropping it. I would argue that we are finally evolving to be the universal humanistic ideal that America was dreamed of being. So when I look back in the past, I think of the plurality of America and what kept us together as a nation over time. And if you look back, scarily enough, it seems like the whiteness is what kept America together, which is kind of a bad thing to say. But think about this: if after the Civil War and Reconstruction efforts continued, and they allowed all the former slaves to have their own land and be at peace and not be persecuted by the white Southerners anymore, would they still choose to live in America? What would bind them to us as a nation?
There was... Going off of that, because I don't think that's necessarily right, because we had the... What was it? There was a bunch of people advocating for the Africans basically to return to Africa.
Yes.
But the problem was that...
terrible idea.
Yeah, it was a terrible idea.
Because they're not African anymore, they're African American.
Yeah, and it's like...
But would they think of themselves as African American back then?
Oh, yeah. No, they didn't think themselves African American. They thought themselves American. There was no African. The whole African American thing was It was basically a white guy thing.
Yeah.
Place on them just to try and be nice instead of saying pardon the phrasing, but basically saying nigger all the time. It was the white guy white guy nice way of saying things, and it eventually got adopted as being the nice way of pointing it. It was basically saying that they're black and like. But that's not how it started out. These people just wanted to be American. They didn't want to be any different. They wouldn't want color to mean anything.
I mean, did they want to be American?
Yeah.
They got dragged over here against their will.
But these are the descendants of those people who were dragged over, and they were here long enough, and for long enough generations, 2 or 3 generations. That's a long enough time to basically say that they wanted to be American. They wanted to be a part of this country because they were a part of this country, and we can't necessarily. Like, when you say that the whiteness held it together, it's...
Or like, the white power structure held it together.
But even then, that power structure is still under scrutiny today. And it's still... It doesn't necessarily work in all situations. And it's certainly a strong power, mostly because the roots that it came from. That the whole European idea was, like, it was a power grab. Everything's a power grab. And it was... We can't say that whiteness held it together, but we can definitely say that it was a major part of American structure. But it's not necessarily the best part of American structure. There's definitely still a lot of issues with it, especially in like...
So, but the thing is, does people wanting to be part of America back then not also point into the whiteness? Because like you're thinking of like the white man's burden, right, to give people culture and civilization, which is based on white ideals still.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that's not necessarily good.
No,
that whole
good.
Yeah, no. But what I'm saying is that they wanted to be part of America, but America was the ideals that were laid out, but never really followed. If you sort of get what I mean. The America that they wanted was the America that we envisioned for our own future. Was that perfect, like what you said before, the perfect humanism.
Was it?
That's the ideal that the African Americans wanted.
Okay.
But that was laid out but never followed by the whites.
No, because
that was...
They're still following their ideal of...
Yeah, the whole European ideal mixed with the newer like American dream ideal and everything else.
If they had the land and the power and they had their own ideal, and white people had a different ideal of North, because the North was still very racist. Very racist. Do you think like they would just be okay with being the same nation? That's the part I'm getting at. Like, eventually.
So are you saying that America is that the America that was created by that very European-centric group is different from the America that we want in the future, and the African American?
It is very different.
Well, yeah. But that's the thing about America, is that it's an evolving nation. It's like I said before, that it's still an incredibly young nation, and if we don't have much to go off of, because America is really unique in the fact that there's so many cultures mixing together to try and reach a certain ideal, but a lot of different ideals. But we do we can't go off of previous nations. So let's take like some of the European nation histories, or like you got like the German history, which starts out like with the barbarous tribes and the Roman intervention and the whole clash of the what was it, the Roman Catholic Empire and everything else, and its eventual split. And you realize how much it's changed. And how, like, in order to get to where it's at today, it took more than 2,000 years. And with America, it would probably be a lot different if it was still run by the Native American. ideals,
Well, yeah.
but which lasted for several thousand years itself. But because those ideals essentially got completely wiped out, the slate became clean and got covered by the.
It got whited out.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to put it. It got whited out, and you had all that stuff coming over from Europe influencing it, but it's still like. It's still bubbling. It's still changing, and it hasn't really settled, or not. I don't think "settled's" the right word. It hasn't
settles.
It hasn't
when it comes
really
to humanity.
Yeah, but it's still really violently turning. Because if you look at the amount of change we've had, like America's changed significantly in a 400-year period. Like 400 years in human history is ridiculously short. And the amount of change we had, it's like violent in comparison. It is like absolutely turbulent, all over the place change. And like it's difficult to say what will happen in the future.
Yeah.
But it's like with America, it's all about that ridiculously fast change. That those changes of ideals that happen in massive bursts in quick increments.
Yeah. So, but the point I'm trying to make here is that the partisan nature of our America today is due to the conflict between the universal humanism and a white humanism still. Even if people who practice the white humanism aren't white, it is just those same ideals, the same ideals of like only Western ideals are civilization, and anything else is barbarism or savagery, and it is part of that, I find.
Yeah, that definitely plays a role, and you're like, there's definitely nothing wrong with that. It's America is still heavily influenced by European culture and Western culture, but I don't think we're entirely the same, because even then,
well, definitely not the same. It's very different. It's always different, but it's like what we have left to deal with from what we gained, and like even the notion of whiteness in Europe is like different nowadays than it was back then. But these things have remnants that last.
Yeah, like I can't disagree with that. It's like there's just so much being thrown into America that it's difficult to try and pinpoint the exact differences. Because what you may call like a difference in America might be very similar to a very specific aspect of European culture.
Yes.
But then again, it's like we took that and then mixed it in with a whole bunch of other stuff. So does that make a difference, or does that make it just a bunch of the same things? So I don't think I've explained it great, but do you sort of get what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm just thinking that the mixing has barely even started yet to reach the universal humanism.
Yeah.
Because our institutions are still super based on European ideals or Enlightenment ideals that evolved from them.
So do you think we're like oil and water now, or do you think we're sort of like a mix of like sugar and water, where we haven't really dissolved yet, but we're still big clumps?
I hope we're still a sugar and water scenario that will eventually fix itself over time, or else there's just gonna be more issues in the future. Because if it's oil and water, then it's a nation of two different philosophies that cannot mix, which will
eventually split.
Yeah.
But you have like the Civil War, so it's like that's a telling of it, or
I think it is actually, because like it was an evolution of that like white humanism that became, we also need to treat these black people as sort of human, and they don't deserve to just be used for labor like an animal. And that was the first evolution of it, and that was when we saw a fight between that.
Yeah. Like, it's difficult. Like, America is just, it's too young. Like, there's just so much that's happened. And then, of course, like, if you go to modern day America, you have the technology revolutions, which took place, and essentially the invention of the Switch, which led to,
not the Nintendo Switch.
No, the actual Switch, like a light switch, being able to, because people say it was a computer, but it was the switch. The ability to take electricity and essentially
and control it.
Open and close the circuit.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily control, but switches literally define every modern technology that we have today. There is nothing today that is not run on switches that uses electricity.
And the problem is people aren't run on switches, so you can't just turn on that universal humanism.
What I'm getting with it is that invention shotgunned us like years into the future. It just started a technology revolution. So like the Switch was invented 100 years ago. More than 100 years ago, 1800s. And it just, within 100 years, our technology catapulted an equivalent of almost like 2,000 years worth of human history's inventions. So the number of technological
inventions. That is a postulate that I'm not sure you can really test. I'm gonna say
if you take what was it? God, I'm trying to remember the book, because the number of inventions that were created in the past 2,000 years before the invention of the Switch equals the number of inventions created within the past 100 years, and we have already surpassed it.
I'm just trying to point out that how we exist as humans is intrinsically linked to technology, basically.
Yeah.
It would be hard to define how we would evolve philosophically without that technology, because there's no examples of that.
Yeah, but like just as a fact, we have a lot more technology coming out now than we did past 200 to 150 years ago. But because of that, in modern day society, it's completely changed the route that American ideals and philosophy would have taken. So
what do you think would be the route without technology? Is the thing
it would be a lot less turbulent. It would be a lot slower. America constant
speed of communication evolves. Evolves philosophy.
Printing press was invented when America was just getting started, and that just shook it. Though it started more on the whole religious era, and it was really used for religious pamphlets and that sort of deal. But it completely changed the course layout that was America was headed towards, because America was probably going to be a lot more split. It was probably because America was probably going to be a bunch of separate nations without the printing press. Though, me saying this is more my own idea.
Yeah, speculation.
It's more, it's speculation. But
it's
when
hard
you
to really predict that. So, but it would make a really good alt history novel.
True. Yeah, but it's you could definitely see it happening. America splitting up.
I mean, you can always see America splitting up happening. Why it hasn't is what makes America so unique is how.
Yeah, how did it not break apart into 100 pieces?
What was the Martin Luther King quote? The connection of human whatever. Let's look that up because I don't want to butcher it. It's the web of human interconnected, yeah. Like inexorable web of human connection or something. Man, I wish I remembered quotes better.
Let's see. Google, come on.
It was in a real sense, all life is Alabama letter.
In a real sense, all life is interrelated. All men are caught in an inescapable
network of mutuality. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the quote.
Tied in a single garment of destiny.
See, that is what I think ultimately America will be. It's just America, until this point, has been more of the fabric of whiteness, trying to pull all these different people together under the same banner, which doesn't really work.
Yeah, but because they pulled all these groups together,
eventually it evolves into a better form of humanism, mutuality.
Like, what is it? It's like it's like a scale that's really self-balanced, and you keep on trying to balance it. So it goes from one side to the other side to the other side to the other side until eventually it balances itself out.
Yes.
Like we're stuck in sort of that still turbulence, like one side to the other. But it's, I think, like, that's what makes America. It's that whole turbulence. Like it's sort of interesting because, like, normally when you want to make a nation become stable, you don't want a turbulent atmosphere. You don't want a very communicative atmosphere.
No.
You want an atmosphere that's like, we all know what we want to do, and we're just going to do it.
A single ethnic group running everything.
Or a single ideal or ideological group.
Which usually they happen to be the same in most cases, but
But America completely flips that around, and it's just like we have a fucking. We have pardon me. We have a massive we have hundreds of ideological groups. We have so many in this country, I can't count them. Like, I don't even know half of them. But because we have so many, like, it's weird to say, but that that turmoil is making the group stable. Is making America more stable because, like, it's like the whole idea of a change is far more stable than
it's all balanced out in a plural. I can't pronounce pluralism at all in any other form, but so it's all balanced out with all these actors connected under a mutual Americanness.
Like what was it? I don't remember who said it, but it was like perfection is a river. It's strewn with change or something like that. What was it that said it?
No idea.
Yeah, but it was something. It was something like that. But it's like there's no perfect. Like there's no perfect ideal. There's no perfect set. There's no perfect philosophy. But the fact that it's America is,
but
slowly changing to accept all those different philosophies.
So you can get close to it. You can't reach perfection, but you can get close.
Or not.
Closer.
Or rather, not get close, but change so that way you reach the best possible outcome for the times. And even though, like, we say America is suffering from a lot of troubles, it's just the fact that we're saying it and we're actively making changes, or at least trying to actively make changes, shows that we are improving upon ourselves.
Exponential growth towards the asymptote of perfection, if you will. If you like math. The exponential growth would be is sort of like would be really nice, just constant, just like a shot up in the air. But I don't think it's that. It's more like an up and down sort of deal. As we discover more problems, or more problems are created, just things like that. We're actively making changes. But though, like, that's also a part of America. What was it? Who was it? That it was about the problems with government. John Dewey?
Yes.
John Dewey.
That was his thing, was that democracy was a
inherently flawed, thing.
Yeah, was
But
flawed,
it's
but
better than anything else.
was, but that not, but that democracy, the whole government was good because it was based on the people's. It made changes based off of issues the people discovered, or it was a reactive government.
Yeah.
It reacted upon changes, and like one of the big problems with that is that you can't really have a reactive government because eventually changes build up, or eventually issues build up, and you can't react fast enough. And like that's a issue that's happening today, is that we have a whole bunch of issues, but nobody knows where to start, what to do, and how to solve them. But
some people don't want them to be solved because they make lots of money off of it.
Yeah, but we are reacting against those issues. But like,
all right.
But that really is America in the ideal, because like it's a problem because you would rather have a not reactionary, but it's like a preemptive action,
a proactive government,
a proactive government.
Which,
but like that reactionary standard is very American in its ideal. Like like we're the center of democracy.
Yeah.
Like in that sort of sense,
shining city on the hill.
But we are extremely reactive. Like, you throw in one idea, and it explodes. It goes nuts. It is everywhere within a day. More thanks to communication, but like even when communication was first getting started, things like that just exploded. New ideals, like the American ideal of like want the American dream, that idea just exploded. It just went off.
Fell apart.
Yeah, and fell apart, and new ideas came, and it's super reaction. Like it's like it's as reactive. Like if I were to give an example, like or like compare it to something, it's like oxygen. Like it just burns. It just goes off with everything.
America is just a fire.
Yeah,
it's a giant flaming pile.
It's really
with all these fuel sources in it.
Yeah, it's really easy to start a fire in America, and it's like whether that's a good or bad thing is debatable.
All right.
I don't think we should really go into that, but it's definitely defines America. It definitely shows how like crazy America really is. Like,
so you believe America is definitely pluralistic?
Like,
said the word. There you go.
Like,
because that's the argument you're making. That with all these different people and systems,
all these different people, ideas, and systems, like it definitely didn't start out pluralistic.
No,
but it grew into that
and become more. So, right?
Yeah, but I wouldn't say it's perfectly it's not like even all throughout. It's definitely not. There's definitely groups, like you have the white group, which is a nice big circle.
Yeah.
And then you have all the other groups which are surrounding and which are smaller circles, but slowly sucking parts.
Eventually, like
that's a weird way of putting it.
Yeah. Eventually, the demographics will change, though.
Oh yeah, the demographics
and that
will change.
Makes people very afraid.
Yeah, like But then again, it's like that goes into a whole other issue.
Yeah.
Let's not go into that because that's going to go way off topic.
It causes some issues, but
that's a world issue.
Yeah.
The whole that whole consolidation of money and like 1%. That's a world issue.
I mean, I was just talking about how many white people there are in America as opposed to any other race, but
even then, that's going to change. That's going to change.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's going to change, and that's going to affect things. And I think it already is a little bit, but I don't have anything to back up that point.
Yeah, no, that's definitely going to change. Like even with just basic breeding habits of people.
Breeding habits.
Yeah, no.
I like how our discussion on philosophy is so centered around the scientific metaphors we can use.
Yeah, but it's like, no, just naturally, whites are just going to slowly disappear. And rather every race is slowly going to disappear, especially in America, as we become more and more.
Is the thing. As we define race, which in itself is iffy in definition.
Yeah, but that's a whole other argument.
Yeah,
I'm not even going to step down that road.
From, again, the legacy of European ideas, right? Because they have those ideas, and
then that's an entirely different argument. Because that's going to genetic arguments and another part where like race and everything. That's entirely different.
I'm just saying, it's what we get from Europe still. So
yes, but like that's goes down a different road. But more what I was saying before is that America is eventually going to become. Everybody's going to become a mixed race, and nobody can really claim themselves to be all white or purist or whatever. It's going to eventually mix together.
Some will try, and they will fail.
Yeah, but it will eventually become that way. It's going to take a while, but it's going to get there. But that's the thing. It's like America's just a big mix. It's a messy mix with no real. Like, we pretty much defined America pretty well.
Basically, I think we've hit all the topics.
Yeah, we've hit all the big points.
We've gone from Europe, mathematics, species, Galapagos.
Yeah.
We talk about them finches.
Yeah, all the finches. America is just a big mix. With a lot of ideals that we can say stem from Europe, but evolved in America. But where's America headed? Like
we can only hope for a good place.
Yeah, that's
hopefully
basically the
reactive nature of Dewey's democracy doesn't have us going back to that European whiteness, specifically Nazism.
Yeah. Well, Nazism is a huge extreme, and even then,
I'm just worried about the nationalist upsurge in the entire planet at the moment. But again, that's another discussion.
Yeah, that's another discussion. But it's like, right now we are limited to our own very small view of life. Like, we only live for so long, and we're only going to see so much, and we can only discuss based on what's happened in the past.
We can only we're cognizing events of the past, instead of being cognitive of the things happening right now. Eventually, we can cognize those too, and maybe we'll figure out what the hell America actually is.
Yeah, but it's still a good question up in the air. It's like there is no perfect answer for it because America is so turbulent. Like what we discussed before, it's just so all over the place. We have like the European ideals that are coming in, but then we have all the changes that came to them. So it's like hell, people are still having trouble defining where America even started.
Yep.
And like going back to it, if we take a pragmatic approach.
Pragmatic. What is the pragmatic approach to defining America?
Yeah. Like, where does it become useful to define America? What's even useful about?
What is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, because like America is super focused on just the future of it.
Yeah.
Where's America going? That's the important bit.
Where can we get America to go based on what we know right now?
Yeah, and where it hasn't been. I think that's the best answer because, like,
do we want to go where it hasn't been though? Is another question when you bring that up. Because America has been
that could go in a lot of bad direction, but it's like
I don't want to live under a new monarchy because people are like, hey, we haven't tried that yet.
yeah, but you get what I mean.
I get it.
We don't want to hit the same problems we've had in the past.
Yeah.
Or rather, we want to cover those issues if they were issues. Like, we only just, like, it's been like the past 60, 70 years that we only started really talking about the whole African American issue and then feminist issue and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's been...
I mean, they were talking about it before the popular consciousness of white male America was.
Talking, not like, taking action.
Yeah.
Taking action.
Taking
is
action,
the best
yes.
idea. Yeah. But we've discussed America. We talked
For
about,
an hour now.
Yeah, we've actually gone through an hour.
Nice.
And it's like,
something.
there's a lot more to cover. Like, we've only touched the surface. We can go into a whole lot more detail on every single one of the issues
we could write an essay on it, but no one has time for that.
No one. But we've covered most of the basic points.
And hopefully this gets us a good grade. Ha ha ha.
Yes. Suck it up. But yeah, that's America.
That is America.
That's America.
And if we had any editing skills, we just throw in Donald Glover's "This Is America," just because we could.
Too bad I don't. Okay.
You'll just have to load it up on YouTube.
Okay, so this has been Matthew Ferris
and Jacob Matsubara
on What is America, like we know.